Hello once again, and welcome to Ethan Chats. Today we have Arthur Douglas, concerned citizen. How you doing, sir?
I'm good.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get started, I just want to kind of have you share a little bit about yourself, because once we get started, people will be able to put it together, because you're a thinker, and that, we got to get that kind of out there.
Got it. Well, been involved in developing projects for the web for about 11 years. So can't really discuss most of it because of NDAs, but I've been involved in stuff. And again, we're a business partner of mine who lives in LA. We are working on something right now that we hope to launch by the end of the year. But I'd say we'll all know about it pretty soon.
All right. Good enough.
Yeah.
Good enough.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that we've been talking about is how to invest in our young African American males.
Right.
There are
Right.
plenty of programs for African American females,
Yeah.
and that's great. There are plenty of programs for, them, and nobody wants to take that away.
Right.
But somehow the African American male has been left out of the equation. And so I kind of want to start there.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your take on how we invest in the African American young men, number one? Because I've just found some information that says we spend $75,000 per year per person that's in prison as an adult.
Right.
And it's more than $75,000 per year if they're not an adult.
Right. Right.
So if you run the numbers, it doesn't make sense to invest in the youth after they become, problematic. Let's
Right.
just say that.
Right.
Because that covers a whole multitude of different types of problems.
Right.
Rather than invest in them up front,
Right.
so that they get the proper, learning skills, development as they should be from preschool to third grade. Because the common knowledge is that if a child isn't reading and writing with comprehension at third grade level when they're in the third grade, then they're probably going to be behind
Right.
in every class because of that one fact.
Right.
And the
Right.
same is true for math. So how do we approach dealing with that?
I was watching YouTube. There was a lecture, a Stanford lecture about startups. So I watched about 50 hours of it.
Okay.
So I should get a degree at Stanford because of
Yeah.
how much I watched it, my online degree. And I realized something pretty quickly, is that an investment is different than a handout.
Yeah.
In the African American community, the black community, money is given without tools to develop, especially young black men. There's no, it's like, here's money, whether it's a welfare check, whether it's a nonprofit organization that just says, well, we're doing good in the community, we're helping them, we let them, near computers, and that's enough. But that's not an investment. When I was watching these videos, you quickly realize that an investment is a bet. We're betting on you. And a venture capital firm can bet $100 million on one startup. And if they lose it, oh well, they're raising another series of, another series of $50 million to bet on another one. They just, and again, if they lose it, oh, well, if one of their,
Bets.
bets pays off, the 20 other bets that they lost, they make their money back.
Right.
But nobody's betting on black men.
And why is that? Just from your perspective.
Why?
Good question.
I think when you think about it, there are better things to do with black men than to invest in them.
Like put
Prison.
them in prison?
Drugs, alcohol, sports, entertainment, all the things that only a few will succeed at. And so if you are advertising to young black men and giving them a few options, and if you make it, fantastic. If not, there's drugs, there's alcohol,
Right.
there's all sorts of destructive things you can do with your life.
Right.
And so if you're not betting on a young kid, say, you know what, I believe in you. Here's what I'm going to do with that. I'm going to invest in you solving a problem. I think that for black men to achieve greatness, they need to focus on solving problems in their community. And if they solve a problem, then they're going to have a life, they're going to have a life full of joy, peace. And when I was watching again these videos from these startup, the tech community, their whole focus is on solving problems. And if you think about it, you think about Tiger Woods, Oprah Winfrey, Michael Jordan, the usual suspects of rich, Jay-Z, those guys. They all are worth in and around $1 billion. Yet Mark Zuckerberg is worth 60. Bill Gates is worth 90. Warren Buffett is worth 80. Uber is worth 70 billion. Real money.
Right.
Real money that affects real change. And yet, again, we're shown these small areas of where you can succeed. And then on the other end, hey, but if you really want to make change, solve a problem.
Right.
So I started thinking about that. I'm like, we as black men need to stop pointing all these young, talented kids who need another way out. And I thought, why don't we have some sort of startup community where we're investing in their happiness?
Right.
And so when I drilled down on that, realized that the biggest problem in our community is that we're not happy. I know, and again, that seems so simple.
That's a very interesting diagnosis, because purportedly, especially in the African American community, majority of the population are Christians.
Right, right.
And
Should be the happiest people on
should
earth.
be the happiest people on earth, right?
Besides Disneyland, of course. But
What you're saying is that that's not the case.
no, think about it. Happiness is different for men than women.
True.
Men find their happiness in doing.
Right.
Men need purpose.
Right.
When a man retires from his work, within 3 years he's dead because he has no purpose. He's
That is
done
a
his job.
statistic.
Yeah, he's done his job. And if you think about it, and I don't know the stats, but whenever you watch the news and you hear about violence in the world, the first thing doesn't come to your, the first thing I think about is it was a man.
Right.
And if it's a man, it would be funny on the news if we reported that an unhappy man blew himself up.
Now that would be funny.
But it would call to our attention that happy people don't blow themselves up.
Right.
Happy people don't shoot people.
Right.
Happy people don't get into fights.
Right.
Happy people, are happy. And
Happy people help other people.
exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, and they also don't steal from you.
Right.
But, and I thought a great way to test that is have a group of happy people, and if you bring someone around and they're not happy too, then they're unhappy.
Right.
And again, I know this is a simplified way of thinking about it, but we need a simplified way to think about it. And again, for a man, and I'm thinking, what if you went to a young or older man in your community and asked him, or asked that man or that young man, are you happy? And wait for the answer.
Right.
Because I don't think that the answer will come quickly.
I don't either.
I think that they would think about it and go, not sure.
Right.
And I believe that that is the beginning of happiness, is when you can't answer the question and then you have to wrestle with it.
I think they call that self-discovery.
And and I think that that is lacking in the black community.
Okay.
There's too much noise, there's too much distraction, there's too much, I have to take care of my family, I have to take care of myself. Because when you're in survival mode,
Right.
you can't write poetry.
No, you can't even think.
You can't think. You're trying to survive.
Right.
And if you're trying to survive, which is how the black community is constructed, is survival. Survival against the existential threat and the internal threat, which is I have to worry about my own family.
Right.
So if you're constantly in survival mode, then there's no time
Right.
to think. There's no time to find your purpose. There's no time to find a problem worth solving, worth your
Right.
time.
Right.
And I think that if we can fix that, then you can start the healing process.
Right.
But you have to get out of survival mode.
Right.
And the only way to do that is to have black men and women begin to make bets on their community.
Investments.
Yeah, which is just a bet, meaning I could lose it.
Right.
But,
And being willing to lose.
and being willing to lose,
Right.
because that is how you make change. Again, somebody bet on Bill Gates. Somebody bet on Mark Zuckerberg. Somebody bet on Jeff Bezos. Somebody made a bet.
Yep.
They were willing to lose it all
Yep.
because they believed in the individual. They didn't believe in Amazon. They didn't believe in Microsoft. They didn't believe in Facebook. They believed in those individuals.
And that's a good point, because oftentimes we take the individual and hang them on a cross because they have different ideas about how to solve problems, right?
Right?
And we already discussed, predominantly African American, black people in
Yeah.
America, period, are Christians.
Right. Right.
Not 100%, but a good percentage. Should be the happiest people in the world.
Absolutely.
Yet that doesn't ring true when you look at the despair and the blight in black communities
Right.
in inner cities and rural areas.
Right.
I mean, they still have, people living in shanty houses
right.
in the South,
Right.
and that's all they know. So to be able to bet in a child that is of African American descent and be willing to lose means that somebody that recognizes something in that child is there to bet on.
Right.
So how do we get people to look at that child differently instead of this, the serial, repetitive prison
Right.
baby?
Yeah. I think that, again, I think that you start, let's say we all know some kid or some young person who at one point you go, man, that sky's the limit for that kid, right?
Right.
And all of a sudden they're 19 years old and, oh boy, I don't want to, here he comes again.
Right.
At that point, that's when you need to go all in,
Yeah.
right? And I think that for the most part, the church in these communities are there doing some good, but then when you have a storefront church, that guy's just there to take, retired women's money.
It's funny you should say that because I have you sent me something
Yeah.
and I took the test. It's a link on the web. It's a website
Yeah.
and it's called
Yeah.
JesusLikesMe.com.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally laughed at that when I saw the name because it was funny but so relevant
Yeah. Yeah.
because I believe in God.
Yeah.
So when I took the test, I had to ask myself, as an engineer, how does this work?
Well, maybe we should step back for a second and I'll give you a little bit of
Go ahead.
the origin story.
Yeah, tell us about the origin of JesusLikesMe.com.
So, it makes me laugh every time I think. So in 2005, I was working on a project, and a friend of mine had invited me to a Bible study. And I went, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I'll go. And so I go up there, and we're having our Bible study, and I forgot what book we were reading, and at the end of it, one of my friends, great girl, I asked her, hey, I have a question. She says, what? I said, Jesus loves you, right? She says, of course he does. He loves you too. He loves everybody. I thought, that's nice. I said, does Jesus like you? And she paused and looked at me and she paused for a long time. She says, I hope so. And so as soon as I left, I said, there's something there.
Right.
And I thought, if you're certain that he loves you,
Right.
but you're not certain he likes you.
You need to do some serious reconciliation.
So I thought, I called up a programmer, a friend of mine. I said, I have this idea. I said, what I want to do is I want to create a test for believers and non-believers, a test based on the golden rule.
Right.
And I said, just score it.
Right.
I'll send you the questions and just sort of break it down into points.
Right.
You get so many points for whatever. And then
Well, before
yeah.
you continue, tell us what the golden rule is because most people may not know what that is.
Well, the golden rule is do unto others as you'd have them do to you. And again, if you had everybody on the planet just committed to doing that for one day, there'd be no problems.
Exactly.
And so after we worked out the details of the site, my programmer said, I don't want to be a part of this. Just leave me out. I said, that's fine. And so I sent it around to a bunch of people. And I said, take the test. I just want to see if Jesus likes you or not.
Right.
And they take the test, and I took the test first.
Right.
And I got 21.97%. I thought I'd get a lot better, but
Right.
I didn't because I was being honest.
Right.
And so I realized that what it does is it makes you mindful, it makes you aware.
Yes.
And that's what's missing in our community is an awareness of someone else, is awareness of the other.
Absolutely.
And when you are not aware of others, and all you have to do is something kind to create more kindness,
Right.
there's such a focus on the self
It is.
that you isolate yourself from the community, and then all of a sudden that's when things go bad, when you're not accountable to the community.
Right, because one of the things that they did a report on before social media really took off the way that it did was social scientists predicted that if people started to use social media instead of interact with people,
Yeah,
that they would become more
isolated. Absolutely, yeah,
less communicative,
yeah.
and more vain. And over the course of the last 17 years,
Yeah.
that's borne out to be true.
Right. We're less connected. We're less social. We don't talk to each other anymore. We talk at each
We
other.
talk at each other.
And emojis too.
Yeah.
And everybody it's a narcissistic system built to isolate, to throw ads at you so that the platform makes billions and yet you're left impoverished, both monetarily and spiritually and socially.
Yeah. And just to get at that spiritually, there's a part of everybody that, mind, body, and spirit that they need to feed. If they don't feed their mind, then there are repercussions for that. If they don't feed their body the right nutrients, there's repercussions for that.
Right.
If they don't feed their spirit,
Right.
there's repercussions for that.
And we're seeing that.
And we're seeing that.
Right.
And so when you introduce, JesusLikesMe.com, I lit up because I see it as a tool, just like you articulated already, to hold people accountable.
Right.
Because if you say that you're a Christian,
Right.
then your likability quotient should be pretty high.
92%.
I cheated. I wasn't being honest.
I was blown away by that. I was like, wow.
I'm an engineer.
Yeah, I know.
And I was just,
Yeah.
doing the QA testing on it. And I had to test the limits.
Right. But the site, it wasn't designed to be bought out or anything like that. It was to make you mindful while you're in your community.
It's a utilitarian tool. And that's the part that I love about it, because it's not something that can be used for any other purpose.
Right.
Right? I mean, you may be able to change the scoring,
Right.
but the idea, the concept behind it is to be accountable to your belief system.
Right. And the great thing about it is you don't have to believe to take the test.
No.
Because it was set up for, one thing that believers and unbelievers have in common is that they both want heaven on earth.
Right.
We all want,
Heaven on earth.
right, we all want to be happy. Who
Right.
doesn't want to be happy?
Yeah.
But I created this to be a tool towards happiness.
Right.
Because you're not isolated.
Right.
One of the test questions is have you hugged a loved one today?
Right.
Which means you can't hug them over the internet.
No.
You have to go to them.
Exactly.
Hug them.
Right.
Have you told someone you care about that you love them
Right.
today?
Right.
It's always today.
Now,
because
I will tell you, after taking that test, even though I did my,
you messed with it.
stress test, it made me go hug my mom.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I get that.
yeah. Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
And I think others will get it too.
Yeah.
And that's why we're going to put it up on the screen so they can go to it and try it right now.
Yeah. It's 11 years old, so.
JesusLikesMe.com. Come on,
I know.
man.
It's so funny.
That's beautiful.
I know. Again, there are, and that's the great thing. There's 2.5 billion Christians on the planet. If
Right.
they took the test once, I think that the people that they're connected to would be transformative.
Yes.
That was the big idea. That was, that was the problem
Right.
I was trying to solve, is how do I get the black community, the church community, in the black community to behave more like Jesus.
Right.
And then for that to pour out of their churches and cathedrals into the community
Right.
to heal.
Exactly. And I certainly, that resonated with me. And we previously talked about
Yeah.
this. And to me, this is something that I'm going to be sharing with my friends who are pastors of churches and bishops of churches and ministers at churches and deacons of churches, because it's not enough for us to keep doing the same things,
Right.
because we're not getting the results that we even used to get
Right.
with churches.
Right.
Church used to be a place where kids came and they worshiped, but they also learned.
Right.
They studied their schoolwork.
Right. Right.
You know,
They had a good meal.
they had a good meal.
Right. The parents could leave them there, go do their job, come back during the summer.
Yeah.
That was my experience.
Exactly, it's mine too.
Yeah.
And so we have programs now where they have to pay.
Right.
Now I get it; it
Yeah.
costs,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
But back to the topic of
Yeah.
investing
Yes.
in
Yeah.
the African American, the black young male
Right.
child.
Right. Right.
We have to do a better job of making sure that we don't keep preaching
Right.
God and Jesus,
Right.
but never act on
Right.
what's supposed to be being done.
Right. And again, this is what I think is the central theme, is there's a problem here. If you can solve this problem, if there's a young black man or black woman out there that can solve that problem,
Right.
they'll have a publicly traded company.
Absolutely.
If you can figure out,
That's a game changer.
that is the biggest problem in our world. The biggest problem is how can you take young men who are again, most violence happens there. It is a massive problem in the black community. You can figure that out, and that's the challenge.
Yeah.
You can figure that out, a way to invest in that area, turn those young minds, those older minds on to that problem.
Right.
Money will pour into the community.
Well, I wish we had more time, but Art, it's been a pleasure. People at home, if you're watching this program, I want you to do two things. I want you to, one, try to find a problem that you can solve.
Absolutely.
Okay? Don't care what it is, solve a problem. I don't care how old you are, solve a problem.
Absolutely.
And the second thing is I want you to go to www.jesuslikesme.com and take the test and just see what your score is. Particularly if you are pastor, minister, deacon, bishop, missionary, just take it and see what your score is. I think it'll be interesting for you. All right. Thank you. We got to have you back again.
I enjoyed it.
It's been
Thank
a
you.
pleasure. Look forward to those product announcements coming at the end of the year.
I solved the problem.
All right. That's what we want to do. Solve problems.